Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of your time. We know it's dinner time. You probably had a long work day as well. Just so you're aware, we do have the rest of the counseling team on this Google Meet as well. So if you have questions while we're doing the presentation, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and one of the counselors will be answering your questions. If you are concerned about anything that you've heard, not too sure if you heard it appropriately, do not worry. We are recording the presentation. We know that a lot of families are at the spring concert or many other things that come up. So rest assured that you will be getting the link to the recording as well as the presentation and a few other things that we're going to be talking about. I do want to mention that it is extremely overwhelming information, so it is a lot info overload, but we want to make sure that we are proactive in giving you all this info as a parent, as a junior, going into senior year in just a couple of weeks. But do know that throughout the senior year, we will walk you through every step of the way. This is just more of an overview of what to expect. So to get us started, we will go ahead and go towards our agenda just so you have an idea of what to expect tonight. We're going to talk about our counseling department, our high school graduation requirements, which at this point most of you are aware of them, but just to kind of recap that, as well as the many post-secondary options. What is the holistic approach to college admissions and summer activities, things to do this upcoming summer to boost those college applications, resumes, etc. And then we'll end with resources, next steps, and then any questions that were not answered through the chat or that might feel beneficial for the rest of the group. So just a little bit of an overview. So you should know more or less, hopefully, who your school counselor is at El Medina High. If not, this is a list of all of our counselors. We are based by last name, not by grade level. So ideally, you will be with the same counselor for senior year. So if your last names are A through Cortez, you're with Mr. Garcia. If your last names are COS through HREB, you're with Mrs. Tan. If your last names are Hernandez to Mejia, you're with Mrs. Calvillo. And last names Melendez to Romero, you're with myself, Mrs. Gomez, and Romo through Z is with Mrs. Singleton. Now, our role as school counselors is to support every single student, not just academically, but also socially, emotionally, with their college and career goals. We do have a website because we know all of this information is a lot, and we're not expecting students nor parents to remember every single thing we talked about. So it is important to access our website as often as possible. We will post the presentations on there, along with other informations and links. We also have an Instagram page. We feel that that is more or less now becoming the best way to communicate with people. So we do also post things on there. As always, you also get that weekly newsletter through the school, and that has a section with our counseling information and upcoming events, things that you need to be aware of. So we're going to go into graduation and the A through G requirements. So you're going to see a side-by-side image of the graduation requirements and the A through G. So A through Gs, I'm sure you've heard of this before, but these are the requirements to get into a UC and a Cal State. It's very specific when it comes to certain areas, and they are not to be confused with graduation requirements. There are some overlaps, but there's also a lot of differences. So the biggest thing that we point out junior into senior year is to make sure that we're hitting those marks that the university is recommending. Now, as counselors, we will always be making sure that your student is on track towards graduation, but also through the A through G requirements. So we will point out if there's an area that is missing, maybe the student did not earn a C or better, and that's what universities are looking for. So we will recommend either summer school or our APEX program to make that up. Now, going into senior year, it's really important that every senior aiming at a four-year university has a math class. Now, you're going to notice that the A through G requirement will say 3 years required of math, fourth year recommended. Whenever a university is recommending things, they're almost telling us that we should be doing this. So ideally, regardless of major, every single student should have that fourth year of a math. And we can look at your students specifically, but we offer a lot of different math variations, statistics, AP statistics, pre-calculus, AP Calculus AB, AP Calculus BC. There's options. It just depends where your student is currently. They also require the 2 years of science, but recommend a third. So ideally, if your student did not take a science this school year, no worries. We can look at it for next school year and add it in there. Now, sometimes students will say, my area is not science. I don't want to do a third year. Is that okay? The answer is yes, as long as we do something extra elsewhere. For example, the 2 years of language are required. At our school, we offer Spanish or French. If the student took a third year, which is recommended, then they're already standing out. So if I don't do the extra science, but I did the extra language, then that is okay. Or maybe I did more than 1 year of a fine arts, then that is also okay. The math is kind of that area that is like a expectation. They're a little bit more flexible with it when it comes to sciences and languages, but they still want to adhere to the A through G requirements. So when we met with your students this semester to plan for senior year, we looked at both graduation and A through G requirements, and we made our recommendation for what your students should do if they're looking to be A through G eligible. Now, current grades are extremely important because if your student is falling short in any of these areas, we will also be encouraging that, one, they get those grades up because we still have plenty of school left and plenty of things coming up. And in the event that they don't, then we're going to be looking at making it up via summer school or looking at our other options. So just something to be aware of. With graduation requirements, we're going to be making sure that your student is on track all the time. The A through Gs, it just kind of depends. It depends on how the student feels. Some students will say, I'm not looking for A through G eligibility. I am looking to be able to go to a community college or go into military or none of the above. So we always ask those questions, but our ultimate goal is for as many students to have as many options. So ideally the A through G requirements in addition to their already required graduation requirements. Okay, so moving into the post-secondary options. Now, there are many different things that we can do after Elmo High, and I think our biggest goal as a counseling team is to make sure that when your student leaves our school, they do have a next step. They're not just wondering, now what do I do with my time? So we want to make sure that when they leave us, they either tell us, we're going to community college, I already have everything ready for me to attend the community college, or I'm going to a 4-year, or I'm going into military, or I'm going into another scenario. Maybe they're doing a missionary trip, or maybe they're doing a mission, or maybe they want to enter the workforce and take a gap year. So we know all these things are very realistic options for our students. So I want to go over the different areas under the community college. Students can ideally go in there if they want to transfer to a 4-year university after the 2 years. There is an excellent program called TAG, which stands for Transfer Admission Guarantee. You will find this at pretty much every community college around us, and I think we're so lucky to be around many community colleges. Our biggest partner is Santiago Canyon College, of course, because it's so close to us. We also partner with Santa Ana College, which is not that far away, Irvine Valley College, Orange Coast College, Fullerton College, Golden West College. So there's a lot of different options for students. All of these schools will offer TAG, and TAG, what it does is if a student meets the requirements under the TAG program, which are pretty basic things, then they are guaranteed admission to a list of UCs. Locally, UC Irvine. Not on that list is LA, Berkeley, and San Diego, but all the other UCs are part of that. Students can also go to a community college and obtain a certificate. Some certificates take only a semester. Some certificates are going up to 2 years or more. It kind of depends on the area. So certificates can fall under the trades, which you will see on this table as well, like pharmacy technicians, cosmetologists, nursing assistants, automotive technicians, culinary, etc. Students can also obtain associate's degrees as well. That definitely will take a little bit more than just 1 semester, typically looking at about 4 semesters or so, depending on the major that the student is looking to declare. Now, we do have a lot of students that choose to go to community college, even though they are eligible for a 4-year or also get into a 4-year university for many reasons, whether it's just a personal choice or just proximity or just not feeling ready for a 4-year or financially. But we always encourage our students to take advantage of the programs that these community colleges offer, such as the honors program, because the honors program works in a cohort model and they make sure that students get priority in enrollment, which we know in college terms means you've won the lottery, right? So we want to make sure that our students have all of those programs in line if their goal is to go to a community college. They also offer programs like EOPS, which supports students with workshops on resume building, career building, also on purchasing books, parking, etc., along with other programs. We all know that at the university, we can get bachelor's degrees and master's and doctorates. Now, there are 10 UCs, 23 Cal States, and about 2,000 private. So there is definitely a lot to choose from. So just something to think about as we're making our list, and we'll talk about making a list shortly. We also know that some students will want to enter the workforce right after high school. Our goal is always to sway away from that. We will respect that, but we definitely want our students to have as much information as possible about all the options that are out there. Or, if they want to take a gap year, we know that that is something that's becoming more common, but we also want to have a timeline that we're going to stick to after the gap year. Then am I applying to a university? Did I take a gap year through the university, or am I looking at community college? We also have students that choose to go into the military, and we also want to talk about the different military academies. Now, with the military academies, they're a little bit different than just joining the military. So we want to make sure that if your student is thinking about applying to a military academy, that they certainly connect with their counselor so we can walk them through all the steps, the big checklist that is required to apply for this. There are some students that look for apprenticeships right after graduation. One of our big partnerships with our school is with Simon Builders, which is our construction pathway, and potentially having an apprenticeship after graduation. So every single student might go into different paths, but we want to make sure that every student has a path that they're going to and that they feel comfortable with before they leave El Medina. Oops. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about the different UC Cal State and the amounts. There are 23 Cal States in California. The Cal State system utilizes a baseline of a 2.5 GPA. This is what you'll find on the website. But in reality, what we know as counselors is that they are looking for students with higher GPAs. The higher, the better, always. They are also looking to make sure that the student is A through G eligible, that they meet every single tier. Now, there are 23 Cal States. How are we going to visit 23 Cal States? Impossible, right? In the month of September, the Cal State system will put together a college night at different areas in California. So we will have one in Anaheim, so not too far from us, at one of the hotels. And once you get this presentation, you'll be able to click on that link and it'll tell you when that is, where that is, what time that is. All of this is completely free. You will find every Cal State there with a table ready to answer questions, promote their university to you. So strongly encourage that you attend this as well. Now, this Cal State application will open on August 1, and this is just opening. It's not submitting. It's not open for submission until October. But this is a good time to just look at the application before senior year actually starts at the school and start inputting data. The application will close on November 30th. There are fee waivers available. The application does cost $70 per university. When the student is applying to the Cal States and they indicate the Cal States they want to apply to, the major that they want to declare for that Cal State, there will also be an area where it asks about the household size and the income. So for parents, it's really important that you communicate this with your students. They don't really know how much their family makes, and we understand it's private, but your student should be aware of that, or you should support them with that piece so they are able to input that information. Now, there is no SAT, ACT required for the Cal State system. They are a very straightforward system. They want to know what classes your student took, what grades they received, and that's literally it. They're very straightforward. They do offer what's called the eligibility index to local students in the area of a certain Cal State. For example, our area belongs to Cal State Fullerton. That is our closest Cal State. So they have a higher rate of accepting students in the local area. They utilize a system called the multi-factor admission score. They look at certain things in the GPA. If the student is a STEM major, it's a little bit different, but more or less what we're saying is that every one of our students should consider Cal State Fullerton as their safety school, as long as that 3.0 is there and the A through G requirements. Now, many times students will say, everybody goes to Cal State Fullerton. I don't want to go to Cal State Fullerton. I'm going to see everybody again. The reality is that it's not true. Cal State Fullerton is a huge school. We're not all going to be there at the same time. Might we see somebody from our high school? Maybe, but that's very limited that we will have that opportunity. So our recommendation is to add Cal State Fullerton as a safety, and we will talk about tiers shortly. Now, with the UC system, there are 10 campuses in California. Their GPA requirements are a baseline of a 3.0. We know that 3.0 is baseline, but we're looking for a higher GPA. We know that they are competitive. but they also follow what's called the holistic approach, and we will talk about what that is as well. This application also opens August 1, also closes November 30th. It is open for submission November 1st. This application is a lot more extensive, so my recommendation 100% is August 1 or around those dates. Start creating the account, start putting in basic things that we know, our names, our addresses, where we go to school, things like that. And then we start filling in slowly all of the parts. It is a very extensive application. So we definitely don't want to wait until November to start working on this. It is something very evident when somebody waited until the last minute. They will know. So we definitely don't want that to be any of our students. UC system is also a test blind for the SAT, ACT, meaning that they don't require it. They will utilize it for placement purposes, but if the student did not take it, they will not be penalized. It is not used for admissions at all. They also follow what's called the local guarantee, or the ELC, which in essence is the top 9% of the class of 2027 at El Medina High in particular. Our district will submit those names around this time frame. If the student is part of that top 9%, what ends up happening is if they did not get accepted into any of the UCs that they applied to, the UC system will offer them one of their UCs. Typically what we've seen, and it's not always this case, but what we've seen mainly is UC Merced, which is the youngest UC in the UC system. It's about 20-something years old. So they typically are the ones that are offering those seats. Now, the application for the UC is $80 for each UC. You can also apply for a fee waiver on the application itself. It will ask household size and income. So same idea. We also want to touch up on the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. There are over 50 HBCUs in the nation. There is one application out there called the Common Black College application. A student can fill that application out for only $20 and apply to all 50 HBCUs. So if an HBCU is something you've thought about or considered, strongly recommend using the Common Black College application. Now, we also count with about 2,000 universities across the nation that fall under what we would say private or even out of state. And typically out of state can also be public, but because we are students out of state, the fees might change a little bit more. So we labeled it as private, but for this case. Now, a lot of private schools will utilize two different applications. They either use the Common App, which is more common, or they will use the Coalition app. Some universities, mainly religious universities, will feel that neither of those applications fulfills what they're looking for, so they create their own application. So in essence, if I'm a student that's applying to, let's say, Pepperdine and also Chapman and USC, I will use the Common App, one application for those universities. Now, they will have a personal statement, but each university will also have what they call supplemental essay. And the idea behind the supplemental is to make sure that they are asking questions that they personally want to know. Now, the Coalition will be similar, where it's one application for several universities. It's a smaller list of universities that partake with that. And then the religious schools will have their own. The application for the Common App will also open on August 1. Now, the deadlines, they completely vary. Some deadlines are very early on, as early as October. Some are a little bit later, as late as February of 2027. So it really depends on each university. So it's really important that students, you have a list of schools that you're interested in and deadlines next to that, so you don't miss any of those deadlines. Now, for these private schools, you will need letters of recommendation. Cal State UC does not request that, but privates do. Typically, what we see is 2 or 3 that are required for each applicant. Now, some universities are very specific as to who writes the letter of recommendation. So if I'm going to go into a STEM major, science, tech, engineering, or math, they might be requesting that my math teacher write my letter of rec and my science teacher. It doesn't have to be the teacher I have that year. It can be the teacher that I had the previous year that maybe knows me a little bit more than my current senior year science or math. So it's really important that we're building those relationships and those connections with our teachers, because they will be writing that letter of recommendation. The other letter of recommendation comes from the counselor. So it's the same idea. We want to make sure that our counselor knows us and that we know our counselor, so that letter can be as strong as possible. Now, when we request a letter of recommendation, we ask that students request them 2 to 3 weeks in advance from their deadline. The reason behind this is, as you can imagine, the counselor who has hundreds of students and the teacher who also has hundreds of students might get a lot of requests. So we don't want them to write our letter very quickly. We want them to take their time. We want them to space it out. We don't want a rushed letter. So it's really important that we adhere to the 2 to 3 weeks in advance, so our letter can be as strong as possible. And letters do make a difference on the college admission process. Now, with the private schools, it's really important that we analyze that there is 2 different deadlines. Or 3 really: early action, early decision, and then regular decision. Early action means that a student is applying early to the university and finding out early. So it can be as early as I applied, submitted by October 1, and I find out in December if I am accepted, or maybe I am deferred to regular admission, which happens as well. So early action, the benefit is really just finding out early, kind of getting it out of the way. A lot of universities are tying scholarships to the early action deadline as a way to encourage students to apply early on. That helps them with their timeline and with balancing their needs. Now, early decision is a little bit different, because when we apply early decision, that means that we've decided early that if we get accepted to this university, we are legally bound to attend this university. So if there is a university out there that you've always dreamed of, and you know that you would go to that university no matter the financial aid, no matter what happens, like this is it, then that's the school I would do early decision for. But if you're like, I'm not totally sure I like it, and if I got in, that'd be cool, but I don't know if I'd go, I would do early action or regular admission timeline. So it's really important that we do this, because with early decision, we might get into that university and we might be really happy, but then the financial aid might not be that good. And maybe another school did end up giving us more financial aid, but now we're bound to this university. So thumbs up for early action. Early decision, I would just be cautious unless that's something that you really have thought about. Just be very careful. Now, the requirements vary. Some of these private schools will require the SAT, ACT. Some of them will not. So again, it's really important that we have a list of schools that we're thinking about applying to and knowing what those requirements are for that specific school. Now, the fee for the application, it kind of varies between the different tiers, whether Common App, Coalition, or their own. Some are $30 per school. Most of them will go about $70 to $75 per school. The Common App does have fee waiver attached to it. So that is something the student can request, and then we approve of it on the counseling end. So that's not in the application itself. Now, we do have universities that visit us in the fall. If you're a student that's thinking about applying to Chapman, when Chapman University comes to visit, we want to make sure you're connecting with that rep, because that rep is a key person in the admission process for our area. Chances are that they're the ones that are reviewing the application when it shows up. So it's really important to start building that connection if, let's say, that's the university you've thought about, or any of the other ones that come to visit us. I'm going to go ahead and pause, because I know that's a lot of information. So I don't know if there's like something that we should bring up to the whole group. So I'll refer to the counselors.
Hi, Ms. Gomez. No questions in the chat so far.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I'll keep going. Thank you. So this piece is on making the list. So one of the biggest tasks that we want to put on the junior rising senior this summer soon is to start making a list of schools that they're thinking about. And we want to categorize schools into 3 different tiers. We have our safety schools, our target schools, which are also known as match by some people, and then our reach schools. So with our safety, hopefully you remember that we mentioned Cal State Fullerton should be a safety for all of us, even if we're like, oh, I don't know if I'd go there, because it is very much a safety school. So when we're looking at safety, we know that it's a school where we meet the A through Gs, we meet the requirements, the GPA, we have a pretty good shot of getting in. We know Cal State Fullerton being local is one of those for us. Depending on the student and their GPA, their safety schools might be a little bit different than other students. So that is a conversation that we would have individually with your student, looking at their transcript, their UCCSU GPA, their overall GPA, the amount of APs and honors that were taken as well. Now, that match target area is looking at schools where you meet the requirements, but it's almost like a 50-50. It kind of depends on the pool of applicants. It kind of depends on many other factors. So we ideally also want to have schools in our match target area. So depending on the GPA for a student, if I'm a solid student, I might be looking at like a UCI for my match target. If my GPA is a little bit lower, UCI might become a reach for me. So it kind of depends on that GPA. Also depends on the major. Is it impacted? Is it not? And then our reach schools are those that are a lot more selective. So we're thinking about those UCLAs, those Berkeleys, those Ivy Leagues, those high-end universities. The idea is that students apply to every tier. So a lot of times we'll have students that will say, I'm not going to apply to Stanford. It's my dream, but I'm not going to apply because I'm probably not going to get in. They're a small percentage. Our recommendation is to always apply because we never know. And universities follow that holistic approach that we'll talk about shortly. Now, as we're building our list, we should be looking at different tiers. We should be looking at academics. Is my major offered? Now, a lot of students are not 100% sure on their major, and that's very normal, very much expected. But are there other majors that I might also be interested in? So maybe I want to major in engineering, for mechanical engineering. Do they also offer construction engineering? That's my other one that I'm interested in if this one doesn't work out. So we want to look at all of that as well. For some students, the average class size might be important. For some students, it might not be important. So going to a local school smaller like Chapman might have a lot smaller setting than, let's say, a UCLA, for example, depending on the general eds, right? So we want to look at things like that. For some students are like, I'm looking forward to a lecture hall. That's my thing, 100 peers in a classroom. That's what I'm looking forward to. Or other students might say, I need a smaller setting. I don't like the 100 peers. So something to think about. Some students, when we talk to them, they are thinking about studying abroad. So that's another thing that you might want to look at your university. Do they offer opportunities to study abroad within that major, within your program? Do they offer internships? Do they offer work experience? All of that is so important. So if I'm majoring in, let's say, computer science, and I applied to a school up north, that's probably going to give me a lot of internship opportunities. Now, you can find all this information on the school website for that university. They will have a career center that talks about what partnerships they have, what internships they have based on that major. So something to consider. Now, if you're a student with an IEP or a 504, we also want to make sure that that school is going to honor as best as they can those accommodations. We should also look at environments when we're thinking about universities. How far is the college from my home? Now, some students are thinking, I want to stay local. I want to be around my family and friends. That's awesome. So we're looking at that. Maybe I'm looking at a Cal Poly Pomona, but how far is that really for me to drive back and forth, or is it not? Am I looking at leaving California, going as far away as possible because I want to try something different? So we should be looking at where our school is located. Is it in a rural community, an urban community, a suburban setting? Am I okay with that? I think a lot of students tend to be very shocked when they go visit USC and they find it to be in a very city-like environment. It feels a little bit different than visiting, let's say, Chapman. So those are the things that we're looking for. Am I okay with that? Do I like that sound? You know, the train around me, the traffic, the commotion, or is that not for me? So something to think about as well. What is the area surrounding the campus like? Is it safe? Is there stores around, a mall, groceries, things like that? And then really important is, what is weather like? I've had many students that go out to Washington because they're like, I love the Seattle weather. I love the rain. And that's great. But if it rains every day, are you going to really like that? So something to consider because we're so spoiled out here with our weather. So we want to make sure that if that is what you really want, then awesome. But if it's not something you're totally sure about, we really want to think about that as well. If we are commuting, what is the traffic like? For example, some universities are close by to us in distance, but in traffic terms, they're a lot further. So something to think about as well. And then size might be important to a student. Is it small? Is it medium? Is it a large school? Is it diverse? Is that important to me? Is it not? Activities are very important. We know that these 4 years at a university are meant to be memorable for students. So what clubs are out there? What organizations? Is there Greek life? Am I looking for Greek life or not? I know there's students that want to go to universities that have football games, not because they want to play football, but because they want to go to a football game and experience that excitement, or a school with a top basketball team. Things like that are important to think about as we're making this list as well. Maybe your student wants to play sports. Maybe they don't want to play competitively, but they want to play intramurals. Do they offer that at the campus? Something to think about. And then, of course, the expenses, right? That's kind of like the parent piece that we look at, is what is the total cost of attendance, including tuition? Are they going to need room and board? Are they going to need a ton of books? Not so much. What is the financial aid like for this university? Do they have other fees? Now, it's really important that when we look at a university, we can Google it and it'll tell us tuition and fees. That doesn't mean that's going to be our personal cost, because they're going to be looking at our financial aid. We might get some scholarships. The university might give scholarships as well. So it's not always the cost for that specific student. Now, some students are also offered scholarships, so it's important to make sure that scholarships are renewable. And then the last piece is to look at housing. There are some universities out there that don't guarantee housing because they overbook housing. So we want to make sure that, is that going to be an option for us if we need to go out there and live there? Is housing guaranteed? Is it not? Does it end after a year? Is it guaranteed for the 4? Are there enough apartments around? We know historically students will room and board year 1, maybe year 2, and then after that they start looking for an apartment with their friends and getting roommates. But we also want to know, what is the cost of living in that area, right? We have students that go out to San Francisco and it's all exciting, and then they start looking for an apartment outside of the campus and realize that it's very pricey. So we want to think about things like that. We also want to think about, what is food like in the dorms? I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think that's so important for students. We want to make sure that there are good options for them. They are going to be there for that long, so we want to make sure they're well fed. Does the school have meal plans? And then really important is, how many roommates will the student have? Now, the cost will change depending on if I have 1 other roommate or 2 other roommates, or we've also seen up to 3, so 4 in a bedroom. So all of that is really important to think about. Most of our students are kind of used to being in their own bedroom, and now there's another person and potentially 2 other people. So it's something to think about as well. Okay, so this piece is the holistic approach that we referenced earlier. So this is the idea that the private school and the UC system is looking at the entire student holistically. So they're looking at the extracurriculars that your student is involved in. They're looking at their community service. They're looking at their GPA, which is the most important. That's going to open our door. The A through G requirements, the challenging classes, aka the AP classes, the honors classes, dual enrollment. They're looking at honors and awards that they've received as well. And then they're also looking at the personal statement. So the idea behind this is to showcase that the student is reviewed as a whole, as one. So sometimes students will say, my GPA is not that great, but I'm in band, I'm in a sport, I am in ASB, I run a club, I do a lot of service at my church. All of that is considered. So the university is looking at every single thing that a student is doing. So it's really important that this fall, as a student, you forget to be humble, because this is your chance to really brag about everything that you've done the moment that middle school ended up until the point you're applying. So that's everything in school and out of school. Extracurricular activities is not always being in a club on campus. It can also be you bake on your own, or you do other things as hobbies. All of that does get added to the college app. They basically want to know, what do you do with your time outside of the classroom setting, outside of like TikTok videos, right? What do you do that's productive in your life? Community service, for some students, they're like, I don't have a time to do community service because I have to have a job to help my family. Then that's okay. We include that we are not able to do service, even though we wish we could, because we have to sustain a job. So they want to know everything about a student. So this is that opportunity. And as a parent, I strongly encourage that you encourage your student to not forget all these things. So extracurriculars needs to be added on there. Clubs, sports, religious events, anything that your student has done, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. community service as well. Now, the university is going to want to know what activity did you do or what club did you participate? What was the thing that you did? They will want to know how many hours did you do this? How many weeks did you do this? How many years did you do this? So this is very, very detailed and specific. In the UC application, students get up to 20 areas where they can include extracurricular, service, honors, and awards. So honors and awards is absolutely anything that has been a recognition, the principal's honor roll, the honor roll, the athletic awards, all of that gets added into that section as well. Again, the SAT, ACT is not required in this piece for UCCSU, but those private schools might ask for it. This section has a little bit more detail into everything that I just shared. We want to make sure that if your school does require the SAT or ACT, that you do prepare for this test because it does make a big difference on your application. One way to prepare is through Khan Academy, which is partnered with College Board, who makes the SAT. It can also be books. It can also be applications on your phone. There's a lot of different ways to study for these exams. All of this information you already know. You've already been exposed to. The math that you're going to find there is level math 3. So most of you are finishing that off in the next few weeks. The ACT is Common Core Language, which is literally what you're learning. So it's not as bad as it sounds. A lot of you took the PSAT, so you already know more or less what to expect when you're taking these tests. Now, if you have not started community service, that is okay, never too late. You can always check our Instagram pages. We promote a lot of the elementary schools that are looking for volunteers for their fairs and their events. There's also a website called volunteermatch.org where you can put in your zip code and it gives you places you can volunteer at. But again, it's going to ask you, what did you do? How many hours, how many weeks, how many years? So it's very, very detailed. My recommendation is to keep a Google Doc with all of this info, and we will show you a senior tracker that we created that will also kind of help house all of this info. But a Google Doc will do, a note on the phone will do. We just want to remember all of this. Now, parents, this is where you come in because you, for the most part, have chauffeured them everywhere. So you more or less know the things that they've done. A lot of times when students are applying and we sit down and help them, they don't remember a lot of the things that they do, but the parents do. A lot of students are like, I don't know what awards I got, but the parents do because the parents took pictures of those awards. So this is where you also come in and support your students. When it comes to the personal statement, this Common App system will utilize an option of 7 questions. Students will choose 1 to write about. The UC system will give 8 questions, and you will choose 4 of them to write about. They are very personal, so it will ask questions about like the biggest challenge. It will ask about how you express yourself creatively. It will ask about anything that you want them to know about you. But it is really important that we get personal. So it can be very uncomfortable for students to be very vulnerable and put things on there that maybe were difficult. Maybe they lost a family member, maybe their home had a situation like a fire, maybe they experienced some mental health challenges. So these are things that are painful to talk about, but they do make us who we are. So this is what the university wants to know. So it's really important that we utilize that to our benefit. They're looking at our grades and our classes and all of that on paper, but they want to get to know us as individuals, as human beings. So we want to make sure that we utilize that time to really be open about things. Now, we encourage that students take their time writing this. We don't want to rush through it because it can totally show when we rush through it. We definitely don't want to use AI as a tool to help us write this because they have ways to check on that. We can use it as a resource to get ideas or reformat things, but not utilize it entirely because we don't want to be in a scenario where they're like, you used AI and you're like, what? So we want to make sure that we take our time and that we're open about it. We also encourage students to share it with somebody they trust, whether it's a teacher or a counselor or a family member, just to look it over and make sure that it's actually answering the question. So the biggest thing is, here's the question, answer the question. A lot of times students write beautiful things, but it's not answering what the school is asking for. So we want to be very careful with that as well. I encourage students to read it out loud, just to kind of hear it, maybe record themselves reading it, just to hear, does it sound right? Does that make sense? And then looking at it over and over, not daily, but every so often, just to see if that's totally what they want to submit. We always want to use I statements. I've seen personal insight questions that talk about like somebody's mom or grandma. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, your mom, your grandma is amazing. but they're not the ones applying to the university. So we need to talk about you and how you responded to whatever the issue was. So just something to think about as we progress through the remainder of the school year and the summer. If things come up in life, good things or bad things, I always encourage students to write it out on a Google Doc or a note on their phone, just as a reminder of these things. So let's say I wasn't ready to do a presentation, but I went on there and rocked it and it felt great. And this is what I did to accomplish that, right? So I can talk about that. Or maybe I had a speech and I froze and I panicked and I didn't know what to do for a second, and then I regained my confidence. Or maybe I didn't and I just ran out of the room, and how do I overcome that now? So all those things that just kind of happen around this time frame, it's important to write about it. Just a quick reminder, so when this time comes and we're actually writing things, we can utilize this as reference. Our recommendation, though, is to write these in the summer, to rough draft it, get an idea, get a head start. I would rough draft all 8 options for the UC. I would look at the Common App and maybe pick 2 of those because those are a lot longer. That's a whole essay. Personal Insight for UC is very short, 350 words or less, so very straightforward to the point. But I would say this summer is the best time. Realistically, most students will wait until the fall, and it's very overwhelming for them because they have their sports, their clubs, all of the things running, and then now their courses. So it's a lot on top of the college system. So we want to make sure that they get a this summer, and then when the time comes, they feel a lot more comfortable with their submission. Okay, so this is a little bit more info on the personal statement and the PIQs. We want to highlight those personal growth, the challenges that they overcame, their journeys, unique talents, skills, things that the university will not be able to see on a transcript. We also want to make sure that students give data. So if your student, was captain of one of the teams and this team is a large team, then we need to make sure we share that. If I'm captain of 100, students on my team or 50 students on my team, that's a big difference as opposed to me and like 5 others. So we want to make sure that we highlight that. Definitely starting early, not rushing through this, answering all the questions and taking our time. I don't recommend looking at it every day because it starts getting blurry and it's not going to be helpful. Okay, now with the letters of rec, I know we touched upon that already, but I want to make sure that I super highlight this because we do get students that say, hey, I need a letter of rec. Okay, when do you need it by? Tomorrow. Ugh, that's hard because we have other deadlines and other things that we need to meet, and so do the teachers. So we don't want our teacher or our counselor to be writing a letter of rec the day it's due or the day before. Very short, very matter of fact. We want them to take their time and really highlight things that they know about us and that they want to highlight to this university. So the earlier the better, but a standard rule, 2 to 3 weeks to write the letter. In a perfect world, we would ask in person. It's a lot more formal. Sometimes it's not totally doable. If the teacher is out for a trip or a field trip or things like that. But since we do see those people, then we want to ask in person. Now, when we say earlier, we don't mean like ask now because that's too early. We don't mean ask in the summer because that's also too early. We mean ask when school starts, roughly 2 weeks into the school year, because those first 2 weeks are very chaotic for both the counselor and the teacher. A lot of things are happening all at once. So I would say rule of thumb, September should be that first week where we're asking for those letters if they are going to be due pretty soon. If we have time for the letters, then you kind of monitor that as well. We also don't want to ask like 2 months in advance because in 2 months, a lot can happen for the student and great things that we would want to brag about, but we can't if we submit it early. So we want to ask a teacher that knows us well, taught us recently. So some students will say, my freshman year teacher was awesome. Chances are they might not remember the student fully, so we want to be cautious as well. When a student's asking for a letter of recommendation, we ask for them to provide us with a resume if they have one. If they don't, then there's also brag sheets, and this helps us write the letter. We know the student, but we don't know all of the things the student does, especially outside of school. Sometimes we don't know that they're in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or they do club sports. We don't know all those things. So when it's written for us, then we are able to write about that as well. This area will have a link to a video that talks about FERPA and releasing FERPA on the Common App. This is what allows the recommender, whether teacher, counselor, coach, or other, to write freely, knowing that the student will not see the letter of recommendation. So this gives the university the idea that this person is being fully honest. Ideally, none of us are going to talk negatively about a student, but that's what the university recommends, to release the FERPA. If your student doesn't release the FERPA, it's their choice, but the university might look at it a little bit funky. So just something to think about. The other thing that I wanted to add is when we're writing the letter of rec, we're going to be using anecdotes. We're going to be using things that we know about the students. We know a lot of our students are amazing and also very humble. So this is our chance to really brag about the student or talk about things that we saw them do that they might not know that we saw them do, right? So great things. So the purpose of the letter is to really give more of a personal touch to the applicant. I'm going to go ahead and pause there in case there's any questions that the group would benefit from. So I'll refer to the counselors.
Hello, Ms. Gomez. So far, no questions in the chat, but they're welcome to put them in and I can share them with you.
Okay, awesome. So we'll go ahead and move on to summer activities. So this summer is extremely important. We know it's your students' last summer before they're potentially off, right, to a university next summer. So we want them to enjoy their summer, hang out with their friends, recharge and reset. But we also want them to be somewhat busy in a sense, right? We know that the university values the summer times as opportunities for students to go into maybe different programs, maybe do community service, maybe work experience, maybe be part of programs like this one. So we're going to talk about College Bound. College Bound is a partnership that we have on our campus with the Boys and Girls Club. And this is an amazing program that basically everything that I've talked about so far, they end up doing in their program. They offer in-person events, and they also offer virtual events that talk about the college application process, that talk about financial aid. The program itself will provide them with a lot of information, not just in the summer, but throughout the school year. This is completely free. They offer scholarships for students at the end of the senior year. They offer fee waivers, not just for college apps, but also for the AP exams. They offer a lot of different things. So we have a member from College Bound on our campus every single day that is available to help students with anything that they need college related. This is a great opportunity for students to look into for this summer. Every time a student participates, they get entered into a raffle. You might not be able to participate in all of them because you're busy, but here and there, it'll be helpful just to feel more prepared. This is also something you put on your college application as a program that you embarked on. They want to know everything that you've been doing in the last years of high school. So they want to include things like that as well. So taking advantage of these programs. There is no requirement to join this program, just being an Elmo student. So very straightforward. And once you get this presentation, you will also have access to scan that QR code. Now, other ideas for your summer. Some students are very eager to work, which is fine. We understand they're eager to get some of that financial gain. So that can be something that they partake on. It does go on the college application. It will ask if they have work experience. It will ask what they did, how many hours they worked. The UC app will also ask what they did with their money, and there is no right or wrong answers. It doesn't have to be, I'm saving it for college. It can be, I spent it on a new wardrobe. That's okay too. Now, if your student is lacking in the A through G requirements or graduation, then we're going to talk about summer school for that credit recovery, for that grade improvement, if that applies to your students. A lot of our students are also embarking on college classes. That is also something that goes on the college application, what course you took, what grade you received or earned, and where did you take it. So that's also something that a student can partake on this summer. We know a lot of our sports have summer camps. That is also something that needs to be on the college application because that's something that you're doing outside of the classroom wall. So we want to make sure that they're aware that as opposed to like being at home watching TV or being at the beach every day, you're partaking into your sport because you're that serious about your sport. So something to think about if that applies. Community service. This summer is a great time to do service. You're not as busy as you are during the school year. So that can be at a local library. That can be at a summer camp for kids. That can be utilizing your skills and talents to help others. It can be you visiting a college. It can be you taking a trip to see different colleges. Maybe you go down south to the Southern California area, the San Diego area, and you visit UC San Diego, San Diego State, University of San Diego, San Marcos. So all of those things are things that you can do over the summer just to get a head start on the college application process. Now, there are scholarships out there the moment that you become an official senior. There's not that many in the summer or the fall because they know that students are very busy with college applications. You're going to see an influx in the spring, but it's never too early to start looking at databases, start getting familiar with scholarships. Maybe starting a new hobby this summer, that could be something that you do. And of course, we still want students to hang out with their friends and family. We know this summer is very important because it's the last one before graduation. So we're going to go into resources. So we talked about Santiago Canyon College as being one of our biggest partners. We do have a Santiago College rep on our sites every day but Mondays, available to help students with any of their questions. Even if students are going to a different community college, they're very accessible, they're very friendly people. They're located in the College and Career Center. We do want you to know that during the fall semester, we will have Santiago Canyon College help students get a head start on their financial aid application, their FAFSA, or their California Dream Act, whichever one applies to them. And then we will have a workshop with Santiago Canyon College for parents on a Saturday to get questions answered about FAFSA or submit their FAFSA as well, or their California Dream Act. So just something to think about. Do know that they are available for students all the time to answer any of their questions. We also have had students utilize our program Zello. We utilize this every time we go into a classroom to do presentations about their year or for selection of courses. We utilize an area in Zello where we're looking at their learning style, we're looking at their interests or personality style, and that helps us look at different options for careers, for majors, for universities. So Zello is part of their OUSD dashboard, so they're always able to go on there without us accessing it for them. That's always open for them to utilize. If a student's not totally sure, like what kind of major should I choose? I don't know. I'm going to go look at personality style and then kind of go from there and see what majors, careers pop up for me. We will also be utilizing California colleges. We looked at it this spring with the juniors, and this is where we saw if they were A through G eligible. We saw what their UCCSU GPA was, and we looked at those grades and transcripts showing up correctly. So this is going to be a way for students to also apply to the university. So we're going to have more information on this. And then this is a flyer on College Bound. So that's a program that we just talked about that is offering the summer opportunities. Excuse me, this program will highlight, or this flyer highlights everything about this program. That is the advisor, Miss Alondra, who is on our campus every single day to also help students with any of their questions. And again, she covers financial aid, she covers the college admission process, she covers just academic advising in general. So this is an added resource to what we already do as counselors. So this is just someone else that they can ask questions to. But of course, we are always available for the student to answer all of these questions. So once you get this presentation and recording tomorrow, we will also be sending what's the senior guidebook. So in essence, everything that I've shared today, which I know is a lot of information, is going to be shared on the senior guidebook. So it will have information on A through G's, the financial aid application system. It will have tips on writing the personal statement, the personal insight question. It will have our emails and contacts. It will also have a calendar of what to expect in the fall. And that's a document that we're going to be adding as we get information from university reps when they come to visit. It has dates on when we go out to the senior class and talk with them. It has information on our college career fair, etc. Now, we also have a senior tracker, and the idea behind the senior tracker is to just house all the information in one location for that student. So how to build that list. What is my list for my universities? What am I thinking about applying to? We also know that a lot of universities will have students end up creating portals after they've applied, and they're very specific with, this is your username, we just gave it to you, and your password has to be very peculiar, lowercase, uppercase, symbols, all these things. So it can be very hard for students to keep track. This is an idea of how to keep track of it. We're not going to put the password in there, but we're going to put hints to remember that password. Or a lot of students will save it on their phone and they'll say like UC app password is this, CSU password is that, and that's more confidential. But this will help students track all the data. We know that they're going to input activity, service, and all of that into UC if they're applying to UC, and into Common App if they're applying to private. But they're going to end up kind of copying and pasting into both. So we figured just put it in one location and then copy and paste from that location as opposed to the two systems. And then this also has an area where they can track financial aid. And that way towards April, when they get their financial aid info, they can decide what is the best setting for me as far as universities go. How much financial aid am I getting from this specific university versus this one? And that way they can narrow down their choice and pick the final university that they're going to commit to. Decision day, commitment day is May 1st. So they have plenty of time from the moment they get accepted. We do have students that get acceptance letters in December that did not apply early action. They just find out early. It just depends on each university, but the majority will issue the information out in March. That's more or less what we've seen as a timeline. And then April comes the financial aid, so they can really decide what is better for them. And then by May 1, they have to officially declare where they're going on their portals. Now we're going to go into financial aid. So this is really important because we know that college can be pricey. So we want to talk about the different ways that we can afford college. We definitely want to encourage every single student to apply to the FAFSA, the financial aid application, or the California DREAM Act. Through the FAFSA or the CATA, students are able to input their income information utilizing the taxes. So in your class, you will be using 2025 taxes, and utilizing this info, the university determines what the student qualifies for them. Now, government-wise, we're looking at Cal Grants, which is California schools, and then Pell Grants coming from the federal system. So ideally, every student applies. This application will open up October 1, and it'll close in March, and we will have those workshops through Santiago Canyon. We also want to encourage students to apply to local and national scholarships. We also want students to look at work and work study as a potential. We also want to have students look at universities and their scholarships and grants, and then parent contribution, if applicable, right? If you happen to have saved a little piggy bank for college, this would be the time where you would tell your students about that piggy bank. There are times where students don't find out until very late that there is a piggy bank for them. So we definitely want to make sure that they're aware of, because sometimes that deters them from applying to universities because they're like, I don't want my parents or I to be in debt. And then there's this piggy bank that we find out about later. We didn't put loans in this circle because we want to avoid loans as much as possible. But sometimes we do have to take out loans. Sometimes those loans are small and they're feasible. Sometimes they're a little large, and not sure if that's the route we want students to go to. So we defer to you as the family to decide on that once the financial aid comes in April. Now, the average American has about $29,900 in debt. We don't want our vanguards to be any of those students. So we want to make sure that they apply to as many scholarships as possible. So again, FAFSA CATA, we will support students with that through SEC as well. We will be submitting the district will be submitting the unweighted GPA in the fall on behalf of the students. So when the students are applying, it'll say, have you submitted your GPA? Yes, we will submit that for them, and this will determine that Pell Grant and Cal Grants. Now, there are some universities that will say, that's cool, you did the FAFSA, but we don't accept that. We only accept the CSS profile. This is a program through the College Board where they are also inputting their financial information. It's a little bit more specific. It takes a little bit longer than the FAFSA, but some universities only accept CSS profile. So as we're making our list, we should be looking at, do they accept the FAFSA, California DREAM Act, or they accept only CSS? So the UC system, CalC system, they're looking at FAFSA, but some of the privates will follow only the CSS profile. So we want to make sure that your student is aware if their specific university has that. So to touch base on scholarships, there's different types of scholarships. There are need-based scholarships. So these are based on financial needs. So when a student is looking at a scholarship, if it's asking for their financial background, maybe a copy of their FAFSA or a copy of the taxes, then we know that they're going to be going for a student that has that need. If you're a family that fortunately doesn't have that need, then I would not encourage the student to apply for a need-based scholarship because they won't qualify. But there's also merit-based scholarships, and these are based on academic performances, talents, skills, extracurriculars, things that the student has accomplished. It is not based on financial need at all. So depending on your family, you and your student can have that conversation and determine more or less where you fall. When your student applies to the UC, it will ask them a questionnaire for scholarship considerations. It'll ask, are you first generation? Are you this? Are you that? Are you that? And they utilize that for scholarships. Now, there are local scholarships. Those are scholarships that are offered only to those who attend El Medina High. There's also scholarships that are district-wide. There's also city, like City of Orange. The Farmers Market puts one on, or the County of Orange. The community-based nonprofits have those that are county-wide. So we want to have students look at local scholarships, primarily because we know that the competition is a lot slimmer. We're also hoping that they also apply to those bigger ones too, because even though the competition is larger, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get it. But I would always focus on local and then focus on state and national, just because that pool gets a little bit bigger of applicants. But there also is amazing scholarships out there that are big named, like the Coca-Cola Foundation. That's a big scholarship. The Edison Scholarship. They also, Edison, the electricity company, also has a major scholarship. So those are a little bit bigger, but we should definitely be applying to those, not thinking like, oh, the pool is so big, I'm not even going to apply. No, we want to apply to as many as possible, but local is always a lot better. A lot of times these scholarships are going to ask us for a personal statement or some sort of essay. This is in essence going to be a replica of what the UC is asking us. So a lot of students will just utilize that. It is not plagiarism because it is your own work. Now there are databases that you can look at. College Board, which all of us are familiar with, has their own database, and those are reputable scholarships that they have already vetted. So that is a great resource. Unigo is also a great resource. Asian Pacific Fund, Hispanic Scholarship Fund, those are also great resources with a list of different scholarships and the requirements that the scholarship has. Some scholarships are going to be specific to the major or location of the school. So I would strongly encourage that we start looking at them, but the meat of it is going to be in the spring, around January to this time frame, are where those scholarships are really booming. I would say January through May is really when it's really happening, because they know that in the fall the student is really busy with their college apps and senior year. Spring is a little bit, I don't want to say more mellow because they're still very busy, but at least the college piece has kind of faded out a little bit. Okay, I want to talk about the UC system and the UC aid that they offer. The UC system has what's called the Blue and Gold Scholarship. This is strictly for California residents or AB 540 students. This covers tuition for families that earn below $100,000. So if your family is below that amount, then you can receive grants and scholarship funds to cover your tuition. You do have to submit the financial aid application or the California DREAM Act, because that's what they utilize to determine this. Now, let's say you are not in that amount and you're above 100,000, but you're below 226,000, then you're considered for what's called the middle class scholarship, where they don't cover all of tuition, but they do cover a percentage. So just something to think about. This is not something extra that you apply to. This is just something that they utilize through FAFSA. So they'll see the info there, and then they will determine if a student qualifies for either of these. If your family makes above that, then you won't qualify for any of these, but there are other scholarships that the UC system does provide based on what the student put on their answers on that questionnaire that's embedded in the application. We do want to take some time to talk about the NCAA. We want to make sure that students that are looking to play at the college level are very much on track with their NCAA requirements. The requirements for NCAA are a little bit different from A through G, a little bit different from graduation requirements. There are some overlaps, but they're very particular. So we want to make sure that if you or your student are interested in NCAA, they have already connected with their counselor to make sure that they're right on track. If the student does need to do credit recovery, then they and their counselor will discuss how to do that, because NCAA is a little bit more peculiar. So we want to make sure that students are aware of this. 2.3 GPA is what the NCAA is looking for. but we also want our students to be A through G eligible should the sport not play out. So we want to make sure that we're reaching that 3.0 threshold so we can apply to universities as well. Now, at this time, it's really important that students are emailing coaches at universities and recruiting personnel just to showcase their interest. They should have already created their account. This will have the link to the eligibility center and the guide for the NCAA. So if you are one of those students, just make sure you connect with your counselor before the school year is over so we can make sure that you're right on track with fulfilling what you need to fulfill. So we're going to end with our next steps. I know this is a lot of info, but again, it's recorded. You have the senior guidebook that really explains all of this in detail, and then access to your counselor at all times as well. So for your next step as a parent, as a student, is to bookmark the counseling website, to follow us on Instagram, ideally, because we post a lot of things and we share all of those community service recruitments. We do send out quarter newsletters, so important to look at those as well. That will highlight just our counseling department area. We want to make sure we apply to financial aid on time. Again, it opens October, it'll close in March, but in a perfect world, we apply before 2027 begins because we want to make sure that we're considered for those Pell Grants and those Cal Grants. We want to make sure that in the summer, as a parent, you also do your ARIES verification on your ARIES parent portal. This is where you put in like emergency contacts and all of that stuff. This is going to help us in the registration process. We want to make sure that this summer you take advantage of visiting universities. So we mentioned going to San Diego, but we can also drive up north and see maybe like Central Coast, UC Santa Barbara, and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And locally, a lot of students apply to Cal State Fullerton, but never visit. So I would totally make it a trip and go either as a family or a group of friends. They all have restaurants. There's a lot of movement, not as much as during the school year, but there's still some movement around. You can still get a good sense of the university and what's around there and how you feel about it before you apply. So we want to make sure that you're very aware of your universities and your options. Definitely encourage that you as a student and parent, you encourage your student to visit with those college reps. Now, we're not going to get all 2,000 universities out there, but we are going to get a good chunk that come visit in our College Career Center. And if they're not visiting, you should be reaching out. And we know that some students are applying to schools out of state, but you can still reach out to an admissions rep and connect with them and get that ball rolling and ask questions as well. We want to make sure that your student checks in with us as counselors, that we start building that list together, that we're aware of what they're doing, that we're aware of when they need letters of recommendation, all of that stuff as well. And then we will have application events in October where students will sign up to get support with the Cal State app through Cal State Fullerton, with their Common App through Chapman University, and with their UC app through UC Irvine. This will be a day during the school day where the students are working on it and there's support available with their college applications. We know the application can be daunting, but it's really not as bad as it sounds. But an extra pair of eyes is always very helpful. Now, the other thing I want to make you aware is students do get senioritis. I know we kind of joke about it, but it is very real. It does happen. So as parents, we want to encourage that you're supportive of your student, that you're checking in on your student. And then students, we want to make sure that you don't fall in that category. We know that in the spring semester after college apps are done, we kind of feel like that sense of relief, but universities are still going to look at those grades. You're still required to submit a final transcript after graduation. And if those grades are not matching what they saw when they reviewed you, they can easily rescind the application and the acceptance. So we want to make sure that's not you. So we want to stay on top of our grades, C's or better in all of our classes, and maintaining that AP. If we already took APs, we want to keep the APs going. If we were in sports or clubs, we want to keep that going. We don't want to just get to senior year and just kind of do the bare minimum. We still have to stay on top of it because they're still going to be looking at that as well. So just so you know, distribution day will happen Monday, August 10th on our campus. It's very specific based on your last name. You do want to do the ARIES verification before that. It will just ease the process tremendously. This will not take you too long. You've done it before. This will be the last time you do it for your students. So that's kind of exciting. So just something to look at, and all this information will be sent as well through the newsletters and the school information systems. So I hope that this was helpful and not too overwhelming. We appreciate that you're joining us. We appreciate your time, and then we are definitely open to questions that you may have. The counselors are also on here to answer questions on the chat as well, or if you want to put it there and we answer it on the screen, that's okay too. But if you don't have any questions, then we thank you for being here. We will send out the recording and all of these links tomorrow via email. So if you don't have anything else, then thank you again for your time.
Ms. Morano said, can we as parents meet with our students' counselor?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always reach out to schedule an appointment to meet with us. This time of year is a little hectic for us, but we can definitely take a look, definitely in the fall when your student is a senior. Right now, our big focus is the senior right now and getting towards graduation and kind of tidying up everything. But yes, definitely reach out to us.
Another question was, how many letters of recommendations are recommended?
So each university is very specific. So some universities will say we only want one letter. Some universities will say we want 3 and 2 teachers, 1 counselor. Some of them will say we want 2, specifically counselor and a teacher. And some of them might specifically want math or science or English, depending on the major. So it really depends. But on average, we see 3, 2 teachers, 1 counselor. Any other questions?
Another question was, can the letters of recommendation be used for multiple universities?
So when the student is applying for Common App, which is who typically asks for letters of rec or coalition application, it will ask which letters or which teacher, staff member do you want to apply to these specific universities. So some students will say, let's say University 1 is asking for a letter of rec from math, but University 2 doesn't care who they get the letter from, and I want my English teacher to write that one. So students can go and select it. But most students will say, okay, I asked these 2 teachers and my counselor, then all of them apply to the same area. So the teacher and the counselor don't have to go in and submit one by one if your student's applying to, let's say, 10 schools or something. It just automatically gets submitted to all of them. Any other questions or thoughts?
You did a great job, Ms. Gomez. Everyone's saying thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you so much from Dina and Gabby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't laugh, Hannah. I know it's you laughing. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
No, thank you for joining us. All right, so if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and close it, but we will send out the recording and all the other information tomorrow, and you're always welcome to reach out as well. Thank you, counselors.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.